Welcome back to movementprofessional.com. So today I want to discuss the diagnosis of plantar fasciitis. I want to discuss some of the common mechanisms that I see in the clinic, as well as some quick treatments for it. So anatomically, if we're looking at where the plantar fascia is, you got the ball of the foot and the heel, and in between the two is your plantar fascia, and it's just basically a thickening in the entire fascial system. And the problem here is that fascia doesn't have nearly the give or the elasticity that muscle has, so when this structure gets tight, it can be really problematic, really painful, and quite difficult to heal. So one of the major mechanisms for why the plantar fascia becomes irritated is that it's not getting enough motion. Therefore, over time, it's just getting stiffer to the point where it turns into irritation and pain. Alright, so that would be one of the major mechanisms, and that happens for a variety of reasons. One of them is that we're really over-supporting our feet for the most part, and sometimes that's absolutely necessary to give your feet support, but at the same time, what we're doing to the plantar fascia is not allowing it to get natural movement. Alright, so a couple of ways that the plantar fascia gets natural movement is during walking. If I have no shoes on here, you can see I strike through the heel, and then when I roll up onto this big toe, which should be a normal part of the gait cycle, this rollover onto the big toe allows for a natural stretch of that plantar fascia. So if you can imagine, most sneakers, shoes, boots, etc., they kind of do that work for you, or they have like a little bit of a slope upward, and certainly they've come out with some of the shoes that have a rocker bottom too, and they just, they're supposed to do all the work for you. Well, we really should be doing some of that work ourselves. It's important. We don't want to underestimate our feet, because what happens is some of the structures, they atrophy, get weak, and they also get really stiff because they're not getting their natural movement. So that's one of the major mechanisms that I see that will cause this type of irritation. The other thing is if you have a really flat foot, really weak arch, then your foot doesn't tend to get the natural motion even when you are walking, even if you weren't wearing supportive shoes, because there's always this turnout and the foot's falling in. There's really no rollover through it. So the alignment in which you walk and how your feet roll, or the lack of roll that they get from having them turned out, can be an issue. So that's why a lot of times there'll be a prescription of an orthotic to elevate the arch when you have this, which can be helpful in a lot of cases, especially if there's substantial irritation. I would say that you got to be careful, because it may actually worsen the problem, because then you're just supporting the area, casting it further, and kind of leading to less movement overall. So you need to do a combination sometimes of casting the foot with an orthotic, get you a better position, but also doing some work to get some motion to the foot. All right, so one of the first ways to start that is just working on a surface that you're comfortable with, either barefoot or with some type of minimal type of shoe, to progressively get closer to barefoot. Then you just work on the gait cycle, striking through the heel, rolling up onto the toe. So you can start this as just weight shifting, where you just shift your weight to the front leg, roll over onto the back toe, and just get this natural stretch to the plantar fascia. All right, if you're in pain, then you got to use your pain as feedback and make sure that you're not going into pain, or you're just touching the onset. And what I'm discussing here is going to be more to kind of have for preventative strategies. If you are having some specific pain, go see a movement professional so that they can supervise you through this process. All right. So after you get the weight shift down, you get the balance there, and you feel like you're relaxed in this rocking, you can turn it into a dynamic, slow walk, where you're really focusing on that rollover each time. So you can think about the slow walking sort of like you're doing drills, like you would in a sport. You would do drills to prepare for the game, but when you're playing the game, you're not really thinking about the drills that you did. They're just kind of happening naturally. Well, that's how it is with the drills with walking. You do the drills, you really put some effort and mindfulness into what you're doing. And then when you're walking, you don't have to put as much mindfulness there. Hopefully it just kind of carries over time. So you want to create that heel strike, rollover, and you're getting that natural stretch on the undersurface of the foot. The other way that the plantar fascia gets motion is doing balance work on unstable surfaces, or just kind of walking in general on unstable surfaces. So I'm on a mat here, which is relatively unstable, depending on who's walking on here, but it's certainly more cushioned than a cement surface. And with that, when I do any type of one-legged standing, the foot is going to move in and out, and it's kind of natural that it does that. So that little motion in and out, this is where we want that pronation, which we always think of as kind of an evil when the feet fall in. We don't want to be standing in this position typically, but dynamically the foot should be able to move in and out of pronation to find balance, especially when we're on unstable surfaces. So doing some balance work on unstable surfaces, we can even use a BOSU, so we can do 2 feet on there. Not trying to make this overly challenging, but just try to get movement to the feet. No shoes on. There's no need to have shoes on here because the ball itself is cushioned enough. All right, so you're just going to get the motion around the plantar fascia in a way that you can't really get on a firmer surface. Okay, so just being able to stand there, and then you can progress to more dynamic movements and just allow the foot to do its thing. All right, you're not trying to stop the motion, trying to think about what's going on up higher and get some stability through there. All right, so that's mechanism number 1 that you usually see, is that, again, there's not enough motion through that plantar fascia. Mechanism number 2 that I also see is that people are putting way too much stress through their feet with standing, walking, and other weight-bearing activities. All right, and this happens for a couple reasons. One, again, is that we get really poor proprioception, poor understanding of our feet because we're overprotecting them, so we don't really have a sense of how hard to put our feet through the ground. All right, so training the feet in barefoot so you can get some of the nerve endings firing and teaching you how hard to put your feet into the ground can be helpful. Also training agility. And then also looking at what the midline is doing. So if you have a position where the pelvis is rotated forward, then automatically all the musculature around here is out of balance and therefore weak. So if we're in an anterior rotation, hip flexors are tight, hip extensors are over lengthened, lumbar extensors are tight, and abdominals are overstretched. So nothing's working really well there, therefore we don't have nearly as much stability. And stability from the midline, what it does is it allows us to kind of have this kind of uplift with every step we take. When we're standing, we're just not putting nearly as much weight through our feet. So having a weak core, or just not having a good control over the midline, can make us walk with a lot more downward force into the ground, which over time, with every step we take, can cause some irritation. So working both on getting the motion to the plantar fascia, as well as working on the mechanics of how to land softer, how to be a little bit more agile, can be very preventative for plantar fasciitis, as well as be a treatment when you have active plantar fasciitis. Again, that should be under supervision of a medical professional. All right, so some just quick exercises other than the stuff that I showed you for just getting the foot moving. It's just doing some soft tissue work, which is also really helpful. It's hard to stretch the plantar fascia. You can't really stretch fascia. You have to remodel and break it down. So getting right under the foot with a ball and just trying to create a downward pressure and going longitudinally from the ball of the foot to the heel and creating some motion of your foot around the ball. So you can curl the toes, spread the toes, while you're creating this kind of kneading effect on the bottom of the foot. You can also go in a transverse motion from the outside of the foot to the inside of the foot, and just seeking out the areas that feel the most tender. All right, so spending about 2 minutes exploring your feet with the ball, doing that often throughout the course of the day, very preventative for the plantar fascia. It can also be very, very helpful in the treatment of it. All right, and then the last thing I would say is just look upstream a little bit. The calf muscle and all the posterior leg musculature here attaches to the Achilles tendon. The Achilles tendon attaches to the heel, and then there is a periosteum, which is like the fascia of the bone on the heel, which really is continuous right into that plantar fascia. So you see oftentimes bone spurs from the plantar fascia pulling so hard on the attachment at the heel that it pulls the periosteum off the bone, and then that space that's created by having the periosteum pulled off the bone fills in with some calcification and creates a bone spur. So we want to be able to treat both sides of the attachment to that calcaneus, that heel. So we work on the posterior leg muscles, the calf, the soleus, as well as working on the plantar fascia. So you simply just get a foam roller, stack one leg on top of the other, find the knots that hurt the most, and what I recommend here, instead of bridging up, because that'll be more challenging on the wrist, is to just push down with the other leg and do more of a transverse motion. Alright, you can usually get more pressure this way, and you get more out of it. You don't have to work as hard with your arms. And then add a little active motion, so you're again getting motion to the foot. So curl the toes, extend the toes, try to spread the toes. It's one of the things we can easily spread our hand. We should really be able to have some of that motion in the toes. And again, we're not using our feet the same way. They're always kind of buckled up in a shoe, so we don't get that kind of motion. So this is your opportunity to try to get some toe motion, which will help get some motion in the plantar fascia because it splays to each toe. Alright, so again, about 2 minutes assessing that. And then you can retest how everything feels in standing. Just always use foot motion as a retest. Just looking at the quality of how your toes spread, how your arches curl after doing any of this work. Alright, so that's just some quick discussion about the mechanism as well as some treatment options for plantar fasciitis. Let me know if you have any questions. See you next time.